Jack. Oh yeah.
Is he sick?
I'm not sure.
아우 연락이 없는데.
Oh.
Did you announce Bible Day for today?
Oh, maybe I should.
그래서 잊어버렸나 보다.
I think they
Um,
forgot.
야,
I was about to say, I was like, usually they.
해줘야 돼.
Yeah.
아무리
Do you want me to start doing the announcement?
sure.
아 이거 무슨 맛인지 모르겠어.
Cream soda.
맛이 이상해. 오렌지. 적응이 안 돼 난. 뷰티가 뭐야?
Featuring.
토마스 목사님 얼굴도 들어있어 이렇게 하는 거. 떨어졌어.
Got it.
그만 좀 흘렸으면 좋겠는데.
I'll try.
휴지 여기 있어요.
Thank you.
너도 피자 많이 먹지 말라고 그러는데.
누가 그래요?
어떤 목사님?
I think this is yours.
응. 그게 맛있어요? 크림소다?
잘 모르겠어.
잘 모르겠어.
그냥 try.
And
Yeah.
Joseph, yeah, I think this is yours. Okay, so I think we're on Rebecca.
투데이 점심 먹었어요?
From VIP.
미안?
VIP.
들어봤는데.
Oh, we're at Isaac. Yeah, we read Rebecca last week, right?
Yeah.
So we're at Isaac. Okay. Ugh.
네 밖에 내가 읽을 수 없을 때 이거 금방 끝났어. 중요한 내용은 더 없었어야 되나?
When Abraham died at the age of 175, Isaac became the head of the family. He loved his wife Rebekah dearly, and she was a comfort to him after his parents died. Yet, for 20 years after they married, Isaac and Rebekah were childless. They prayed to God for help, and at last Rebekah became pregnant with twins. She grew alarmed when she felt the babies jostling inside her. God told her that this was because their boys would grow up to found two rival nations, and that one nation would be stronger than the other. Not stronger, greater. And now when we get to, we'll get into details, but Jacob has dark hair, unlike his elder brother. His elder brother has red hair. Reddish hair.
이서?
At least that's the rumor.
이서 meaning hairy. Keyword is favorite. They called him Jacob, meaning cute picture.
So we don't really know what color their hair were. They were Israelites, so it's mostly black. But
Jacob was Rebecca's favorite.
and Isaac was or Esau was Isaac's favorite. Chapter 25, verse 23. Two nations are in your womb. The two nations Isaac's sons will establish will be Israel, founded by Jacob, and Edom, founded by Esau. Edom has it means red or like red clay or something like that. You can actually look it up. Which is why they suspect. The rumor is the Jewish, say the Jewish tradition is Esau had like reddish hair. Yeah, it means born red all over. So that's that. Yeah, so we can't get too much in details here about it, but you remember Noah's curse on Canaan? 삼기라고, right? From Noah's point of view, 삼기는 게 저주였어요. Noah's point of view. But when it came, so by the time God is working with Jacob and Esau, so God chose Jacob. God loved Jacob and God hated Esau, but it's in covenantal terms, which means God chose Jacob to be his chosen people and not Esau. What that doesn't mean is Esau didn't have a choice to not do evil. So Esau had the choice to do good, but he chose evil is what that means. Why is this important? Well, the curse on not curse, the blessing for Jacob was Edom is supposed to eat like so. God told Rebekah, "You have two nations in your womb, and the elder shall serve the younger." Right? If you look at the point of view of serving someone is an evil, or serving someone is a lesser state or like a curse, then you won't understand what God was doing. Jesus Christ came to serve. Jesus Christ came to serve. So serving is not evil. Serving is not evil. Paul even says, serve one another.
What is serve?
You know.
I know it. But, I want
Yeah. So what it is
from you.
so God is giving Esau an opportunity to be a shadow figure of Jesus Christ. God is giving Esau an opportunity to be Jesus Christ's shadow. He's giving him that blessing opportunity, but he threw it away. That's what that's about. I mean, there's more, but that's one of the things. So if Esau could, and we're gonna talk more, like during the Sunday sermon, we're gonna talk more about this. But when Jacob stole the blessing from Esau, right, and then from Isaac, and then he went out of 10, and then Esau came. Esau cried and he was like, "Oh, don't you even have one? Don't you have any more blessing for me? Not even one. Do you have not even one blessing for me?" And Isaac said, if you read the stuff that he gave Esau a blessing, but if you read what it says, Isaac is essentially saying to Esau, because he said your mother's sons will serve you. He said, if you serve your brother Jacob, then whatever blessing Jacob has, you're going to enjoy it too. Right? So he's like, all you got to do is serve Jacob. But here, serving is not a bad thing, because then he becomes a Christ figure where he serves the younger, he serves the lesser. Right? So if you just stop thinking of serving as a bad thing, right? Because this is a relationship between you and God, and then how you can show your love for God by serving your neighbor, and especially here your brother. So if you serve your brother, you become a shadow figure of Jesus Christ, and therefore you also 이거 다 축복 다. Oh, hey Jack.
우리 오늘 안 잊어버렸네. 우리 오늘 메시지
There you go, brother.
가지고
Thank you. Amen. Good seeing you.
You too.
Good seeing you, man.
Jack, so actually we'll talk about some, actually maybe James forgot or something.
No one's sick?
I mean, he was, but he's better now. Hey, brother.
We're all good.
And so we'll talk we'll talk about the thing that the church is doing when James is here too.
Okay.
So if Esau served Jacob, he'd become a Christ figure by serving his brethren. So in Noah's time, he made it sound like serving is a curse. But God's grace is meant to reverse that, so that by serving it becomes a blessing. That's God's purpose. By serving it becomes a blessing. So if Esau served Jacob, he would have also gained Jacob's blessing and an extra blessing for serving. You see that?
Mhm.
And then, for future generations, Jacob's maybe descendants would have learned also to serve their brothers too, because that's what Jacob's did. That's what the Israelites could not do. Jacob had 12 tribes, and they didn't learn how to serve each other. 무슨 말인지 알아요?
Okay.
Yeah, so Jacob had 12 sons. So there's 12 tribes. But the 12 tribes as brothers didn't learn to serve each other,
Oh.
right?
Why?
Because Jacob didn't learn how to serve. I mean, towards the end, he kind of did when he realized, like, oh, this is how we're supposed to. We're supposed to, because 절하잖아요. 그 에서 앞에서 7번. Right? But it's like the legacy. So it's like,
Yeah. Sorry.
so yeah, the legacy is like,
Who's this?
the legacy is if Esau was, huh? Okay. Oh. Hello? Yeah. You can just leave it at the door.
Yeah, I'm good. What about you?
Doing good.
That's good.
오늘 날씨 너무 좋지? Beautiful day. 뭐 했어 오늘?
학교 갔어요.
너무 좋았어 정말 날씨.
사원이는요?
나도 여기 갔어. 모로월. and what? 안녕하세요. 어서 계세요. 어머머.
집에 못 있고
너무 슬퍼서.
Terrible timing.
계속 그치.
It's a terrible time.
그러니까.
I think it's package came.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes they call.
Right here, dude. Thank you. You need a signature or anything? Signature?
Oh yes, please. Have a good night.
Thank you.
아니 근데 전화를 안 받았으면 어떻게 되는 거야?
They would have just left it in front of the door, probably.
목사님 돌리고 가요.
Yeah, so anyway,
목사님 뭐라고요?
yeah, so that's the shame. That's the bad. That's the asyun, regretful, sad aspect of like Esau is he had an opportunity. Right. He had an opportunity to be a shadow of Jesus Christ, and he had an opportunity to not only receive Jacob's blessing, but the blessing from serving his brother from God. He had that opportunity, but he threw that away.
He lost.
That hindsight is 2020.
Yeah. I mean, not only is hindsight 2020, but so he grew up because his dad is Isaac. And Isaac is a worshiper of God. Esau should have known better. So if you sort of like think about the psychology of Esau, it's that Isaac sort of, hey,
Hi.
Hey, James.
Oh, you're live.
How are you?
살이 많이
you.
빠졌다. Lose weight.
mm,
Now it feel better. What was that? Not the corona.
No,
Mhm.
it wasn't COVID.
Yeah.
Isn't the chills thing going around?
No,
Mhm.
it's just a viral and bacterial infection.
Oh.
Mm,
Bacteria from what?
You okay now?
I had to take
that's good.
antibiotics and I had to take
Antibiotics.
antiviral up until yesterday.
long time. You work 쉬었어요?
Well, I work from home. Work from home 하니까
You want a glove? 말 알으셔요?
무슨 말?
hindsight is 2020.
누가?
hindsight이 막 뒤 보는 거. 그래서 hindsight is 2020 눈 검사하던 2020 막 perfect.
진짜?
그래서 막 뒤로 보면
Hindsight meaning like 뭐가 지나갔어요. And then
어.
뒤돌아보니까 답이 보이는 거예요. If we did this, then you can
Exactly.
see what would have happened. You know, but the reason why this doesn't apply here is see, Isaac. Esau was Isaac's favorite, and Isaac is a worshiper. I mean, so is Rebecca, but Laban is a manipulator, and Rebecca is Laban's sister. So she had a manipulative aspect to her as well, which is why she told Jacob.
Choose something.
Yeah, because it's in the family. Like Laban is very manipulative. We'll see this when we get to Jacob. In the Sunday sermons, like so Laban is Jacob's uncle, and his mother's brother, and Laban is very manipulative.
Yeah.
So much so that Jacob's like, yeah, I'll work 7 years for Rachel, and Laban's like,
Oh.
yeah, no problem, right? He works 7 years, and then they get married in the dark,
You can do that.
and it turns out to be like her older sister, right? And he's like, what the heck, right? He's like, work for me 7 more years, and I'll give you Rachel. So he works a total of 14 years, right? So, and not only that, like he's always trying to make, he's trying to take things, whatever Jacob makes, he's always trying to like gain that for himself rather than let Jacob keep it, even though Jacob was working for Laban. It's very manipulative. So when you see Laban, then you go back and reread what Rebecca does. It's like it sort of runs in the family. Rebecca does that kind of stuff as well, which is why she tricks her own husband, right? And this is because
hereditary.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's not hereditary, not because of the culture that because of their family, because of things they learn, not because of
Your
like
family
DNA.
culture. Something like
Yeah, family culture, yeah. And so there's like a lot to be said about that as well, like family culture. You know, the kind of culture you and your wife set, it becomes the basic foundation for like how your children will perceive the world for the rest of their life. So it's very important. It's very important then like how you, like I said, you can only give what you have.
Mm.
So if you guys have, so parents have to have a solid biblical foundation of like God is the living God. So we have to do what's right and what's good. And then when there's things that we need to trust God to make things okay. So we can't, we can't also then become corrupt like the world is, in order to gain advantages and stuff like that. So if we have those kinds of firm foundation, then the children learn from that. And they're able to navigate better than other people who didn't learn that in this world that we live in. Whereas a lot of people, they learn from their parents who have bad foundation, and then they keep, the web of lies they keep weaving, and the corruption. And then, and a great example is this TikTok video I saw of
You have a TikTok?
I don't have TikTok, so I watch
Your data is safe.
yeah, but I watch a guy who watches on YouTube. I watch a guy who watches TikTok, and
So it's a channel.
yeah, sometimes the channel, sometimes like so he has his own TikTok, but every now and then he uploads his stuff on it, and he has his Twitter account too, I think, and Instagram. So but I don't have Instagram either.
Is he a religious guy? Who is he?
He's a black conservative, so in Ohio. His name is Alpha Hat Wolf or something. Alpha Wolf Hat.
No idea.
So yeah, there was one TikTok that they were showing where so there's these like two white kids. They're like maybe no older than 7, so maybe 5, 6, or 7, and they're in like this playhouse kind of thing, and they're kind of like building stuff. They're putting things in order.
Yeah.
And this black kid, maybe she's like 3 or 4, she's like punching these things, and the 2 other girls are like, hey, help us put these things together, don't knock it down. And the mom recording it, she's like, don't listen to those white girls, don't listen to those carrots, knock it all down, and the baby's like, yeah, the black mom was recording that, and then she was like, don't listen to those Karens.
Carrots?
Karens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then so I saw that and I told that to my brother as well. So and our conclusion is like this kid, so if the black mom was like, yeah, play along, like play nice with these kids, like they're white kids, so play nice with them, and they're play nice with them, whatever. Then that kid would have been able to get along with white people for the rest of their lives. You know what I mean? For the rest of, you know how much benefit like that, and it was a girl too. So like, that's a huge benefit. But because the mom was like, they're white, so break all that they have. For the rest of this girl's life, she's gonna have problems with white girls. for the rest of her life.
Cycles of hate.
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's unbroken.
yeah. So it's like that family culture thing is like it's a serious thing, you know. And unfortunately, so Rachel learned that from her family culture, and so God told
Rebecca.
God told Rebecca. I mean, yeah, God told Rebecca. Rebecca, and then Leah and Rachel too, because Laban was their father. So it's like this family thing going on. Anyway, but so
You still even see that now. Grand majority of my friends, when they're going through something, they never talk about it. And they're like, oh,
because they don't know how. Yeah,
because their parents are the same way.
Yeah.
Their parents
Mhm.
never share.
yeah. They don't know how to. And you know, the words the words. So words are important because if you think about how God used His words, by speaking, He ordered the world. So words are supposed to be used to order things, right? So there's all this confusion in our life. There's all this thought confusion. By putting it into words, so by putting it into some sort of like symbolization of like what's going on, you're able to order what's going on, and then that order is called grammar. So you say that's the hidden grammar of whatever it is, because now you see the order of what's going on there.
Yep.
So yeah, Rebecca. Like I said, we'll get to this when we get to the Sunday sermon for Rebecca. But yeah, so Rebecca, the way God tells Rebecca, like, yeah, there's two nations in your womb. The younger will serve, the elder will serve the younger, and she misinterprets that because I mean maybe she misinterprets it because of Noah's curse, because that entire family. Remember, if you remember, even until Abraham, Noah was alive at that time, so they would have known about great grandpa, right? They would have known about him. So in Noah's mind, when he cursed Canaan, he meant it as a punishment. He meant it as some sort of like a curse, like a bad thing to happen. But in God's grace and in God's economy of things, God does a lot of like reversals of things in order to turn things into a blessing. So
Wasn't there that guy who crossed his hands while blessing?
yeah, even that. Yeah. So Jacob, that was Jacob who crossed his hands to bless Joseph's sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So in God's economy of things, God reverses things and turns it into like a blessing. So for instance, God could have come up with a solution where Jesus Christ could have overcome sin without death. But in this world, God wanted to demonstrate His power over death, which is why He used death to overcome it. You see what I mean? So He has so God, so in a way, He kind of has a sense of humor, because He's like, God is basically saying like, there's nothing in this world that I cannot turn into good or into a blessing, no matter how bad it is. You know, so He uses like the worst things. It doesn't have to happen, but because of sin, our own personal sin, Adam's sin, and because of Satan and devils, evil happens. And then when evil happens, we have a choice. We can say, okay, if we trust in God and His promise in Romans 8, in which God actually promised that all things work for good to those that love God and are the called according to His purpose. If we believe that, then we do what's right and what's good in our lives, and God will turn whatever evil has happened into good. And I know some people are like, oh, why did it have to happen? It's like, that's not the issue. The issue is it happened to you because of your sin, Adam's sin, or the devil's, or Satan. Like, it happened to you because of these evils in the world. It's not God who forced it on you. But what God can force on you is the goodness that can come out of it. He can turn it into good. That's the thing that God can force on you.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like, well, I don't want it to turn to good. Okay. Right. If that's your attitude, then, right? So, yeah. So back to Jacob and Esau. Yeah, so Rebecca having Jacob as her favorite because God said that elder will serve the younger. So in her mind, it's like serving is a bad thing. So she wants to. So instead of waiting on God's timing to, give blessings to Jacob, Jacob learns Rebecca's ways. So the first thing he does is try to take Esau's blessing by tricking him, like, "Hey, I'll sell your birthright for your porridge." Yeah,
Rebecca encourage him to do that.
Yeah, kind of. Like, because in other words, like so from Rebecca's side, she's telling Jacob, whatever you can to get this blessing from God, you have to get it. You must.
근데
어.
사라랑 비슷한 것 같아요.
A little bit, yeah. A
Sarah
little bit.
has manipulate the
Yeah.
situation to get the baby.
Hmm.
There's
It's a similar, not the same, but
similar pattern.
similar because it's the same family. Sarah was a half sister of Abraham, right? And Abraham was the uncle of Laban and Rachel.
Mhm.
So it's a family issue here. That's the point. It's a family, and like that family culture is like being passed on. But the grace of God the purpose of the grace of God for Christians then is to reverse that, to stop whatever evil thing that happens there, and then turn it into a good practice, whatever it is, right? So Esau then has that opportunity right now, because if Esau served Jacob, he would have been a shadow figure of Jesus Christ to serve his brothers. That's the blessing he could have had. But he turned the way of Cain, which is to murder Jacob instead. And yeah, even like I said, we're gonna get to this when we get to the Sunday sermons. But Isaac blesses Jacob with everything, right? And then Esau, and then and this is my trickery too. So Jacob leaves, and then Esau goes, "Oh, he's crying, and he's like, do you only have one? Is there not even one blessing for me? Is there no blessing left at all for me?" And then Isaac blesses Esau with one blessing. And if you read the content of the blessing, it's the exact same blessing that Jacob had, but it requires that he live peacefully with his brother by serving him, right? So Jacob is only blessed with like the material stuff here, and you can say maybe the spiritual too, because he's but what Esau could have had was the same thing that Jacob had, plus the blessing from serving.
More blessing.
Yeah, so Esau could have had, he could have been the more blessed if he served. That's the point here. God gave Esau an opportunity to turn something like Noah's curse, which they perceived to be a bad thing, into a good thing. How do we know? Jesus Christ, he says, "I came to serve." And then even after he served his disciples, he's like, "I'm the master, and yet I washed your feet. Yet I served you. So follow after my example." Right? So in God's mind, he wants to turn this thing that everybody perceives as bad into a good thing. And then Paul even says, "Serve one another." Right? But at this point, Esau is like overcome with rage because he had a myopic, very narrow view of like what a blessing is. So like he wanted to kill Isaac instead of,
Why
and like I
did-
said, it's so, I mean, there's like so much like things going on here. Like Isaac knows that Jacob has to stay in the land of Canaan, and yet he tries to send him out of Canaan, right? So the reason why Abraham sent his servant out is because he learned through Sarah to stay inside the land of Canaan. He learned that from Sarah, believe it or not. He learned that from Sarah, and then so instead of sending Isaac to his previous country, he sends his servant there to get a wife for him, right? So that Isaac would stay there. But Isaac, and like I said, so Isaac doesn't do that. He sends Jacob away from the land of Canaan, right? So you can already see like Isaac doesn't see the importance of staying in Canaan, not as much as his father did. So then it makes sense why Esau doesn't see the importance of keeping the covenant blessings of God. No, for Esau, right? Because Isaac doesn't think so. Why? He sends Jacob out. What he should have done was say, "Jacob, run away from Esau as far as you can, but stay in Canaan. You'll be on the move, but you got to stay in Canaan." And then send his servants to, Lebanon or wherever their family member was to get Rachel and right? But he doesn't do that. So it's like, then you can see, so Isaac didn't see how important the land was in the same way that Abraham saw it that important. So then it makes sense. He probably had the same he probably taught that attitude to Esau, which is why Esau didn't have the same kind of attitude towards his covenant blessing. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, this whole thing is about like family culture and then what they're teaching to their kids and how that's spreading kind of.
One of some,
Any comments or
this past week's sermon was great.
wait, this past week's sermon?
What
was it about? Yeah.
The Tower of, it was a comparison,
Oh yeah.
the allegory between the tower, penetrating the sky.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we're gonna into details this week. So
Okay,
yeah, you're gonna see a lot of the fertility gods are associated with the sky. So Baal is a thunder god or like a weather god. I don't know about Moloch, but the Egyptian god Hathor is a cow goddess, but she's a sky cow goddess, right? And then the phallic symbol is meant to be like a penetration towards like the heaven goddess, and then the seed of men fill the sky, right? And it's that, you could say, mystery religion, that occult that spreads in all of Ham's children, Egypt, Mesopotamia, wherever all these like civilizations came up that involved Ham's children. So that means, and that's one of the reasons why a lot of why a lot of the rabbis thought Ham sexually molested Noah is because there's so many sexual deviant like cults that came out of Ham's his generation. But I think they're going too far with that. The deviancy part is the fact that Ham rebelled against God and it remained in that. That's where the deviancy comes from, because he wanted to indulge in these things. He didn't do it to Noah, but he wanted to indulge in these things, which is why he didn't want to worship God, who would say no to those things. Does that make sense? Yeah. But to say he molested Noah or Noah's wife, that's going a little bit too far, because first of all, the Bible doesn't even hint at that like at all. You have to do a lot of you have to make a lot of assumptions that are not in the text to make that make sense. And even if you do that, you come to the point of, what about Japheth? Because he only curses Ham, but Japheth also ends up rebelling against God as well, except not to the degree that Ham does. Whereas if you look at the entire history of the Bible, everything that's written, anytime any group rebels against God, it's because they have a secret sin that they want to indulge in, and God says no. Then it makes sense. Both Ham and Japheth, they both had their secret sins they wanted to indulge in, and God said no, which is why they didn't worship that God. But in Ham's case, he wanted to sort of like show Noah's hypocrisy to everybody. Is this all making sense? Because I know it's getting like super detailed right now, but
I
yeah.
have to hear your sermon. Has to be. I missed
Oh,
it,
yeah.
I missed it because Kate.
And the reason why you can't, and the reason why the Babel is a sexual innuendo thing is because of the parallel from Genesis 6, where the text is giants came into the daughters of women or daughters of men, right?
Yeah.
And that's like a rape imagery. It's not explicit, but the hint is there. It's like maybe they didn't do it all the time, but that implication is there, and that's how you know it's a sexual innuendo that's being placed in there with a phallic symbol like penetrating the, whatever Canaanite goddess that they had at that time, which is Baal or whatever. Yeah, I mean, no, so this week we're gonna talk about like a lot of the Egyptian goddess.
How long did it take for you to make that sermon?
This sermon?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird. So the sermons themselves, they come together very slowly. So what I do is I take notes on my computer and my phone, like little bits of notes at a time. And then whenever we get to a passage that we need to get to, I review the notes that I made before, and then I put it all together. So the sermons themselves, they only take like 2 days to write. But I work all week trying to put all these things together. And then it's like over 10 years worth of notes that's coming together. And which is why I can't put everything I want to in there. Otherwise we'd be like stuck in here like forever. So I can only tell you guys like the most basic things you guys need to know. So the next part will make sense. Like we didn't even get to the part where actually we're gonna touch on it, but we didn't get to the part in every history of in all the history of the Bible, there always is a priest of God, also known as the sons of God. There's always, and we can't get into it in Babel, but in previous sections as well, like what happened to all the priests between Cain up to Noah? We know the sons of God were marrying, and we sort of skipped over the part, but who exactly were the priests of God at that time? Those questions are kind of important because, for instance, Enos definitely would have been a priest of God because he called upon the name of the Lord, right? So he would have been a priest of Enoch would have been a priest of God. So when you follow that kind of logic, you're okay. Who's the priest of God now? Well, Jesus Christ is the high priest in heaven, and then we are a priest of God in the high priest Jesus Christ. So that's where the priest exists. What about the Tower of Babel? What about during the time of Nimrod?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't they offering any burnt sacrifices like Noah did when he first got off the ark? Right, so that means these guys are shirking off their duty.
Nimrod the hunter.
Yeah. Where's the high priest during his time? Right, because the Bible doesn't mention it. So the question is, how are they reconciling their sin towards God? There's nobody doing that.
Oh, they didn't do.
Yeah, there's no priest.
They're not doing it.
Yeah, I mean there is a priest, but they're not doing their priestly work. And then so once you get that, so that's the idea of Babel. Oh, so when the priests stop doing their job, that evil starts to rise. Then you get to Judges. Same thing with the Levites. The Levites aren't doing their work anymore. What happens? Idolatry. It proliferates. You get to the king's era. David made sure there was a high priest and there was like priest holding the temple of God. Then after Solomon, when the kingdom splits into two, the northern Israel falls right away. Why? Because priests aren't doing their priestly work. And then you have southern Judah who have priests, but then high priest becomes this like political thing where the kings get to select. The kings are not allowed. The way the high priests are chosen is they're supposed to be the children, the firstborn, whoever it is, the patriarch of Aaron's line. That's the high priest. But instead, the kings are playing chess with them, like politics. So you end up having like two high priests, right? So when the priests aren't doing their job, idolatry proliferates. So then you look at our world right now. We definitely know there's priests because we're priests. Why is there so much like, especially like if you look at America, but not just America, like why is there so much like sexual deviancy and perversion that's just like happening everywhere? It's because priests are not doing their job. See, like that answer comes from Babel, but we're not going to get into that. I mean, I want to, but we just don't have the time. Do you know what I mean? There's like this much stuff, and then we can only talk about this much. Otherwise, like we're going to be stuck in there forever. So,
how can priests have an effect while remaining pacifists?
I mean, so priests can be pacifists. Because we're the executioner of God's will. So let's say you belong in some sort of like board member, part of like the local school board member or something like that, right?
Yep.
And they're about to pass, whatever it is. Something that is like, you should be able to say, I'm sorry to disagree with you guys, but this goes against my belief system. So I'm going to have to vote no. And then they're going to go, how about if we give you like $1 million? Right?
Yeah. No.
Right? Why do I bring this up? A lot of the politics works like that. And they bring that kind of stuff into like local districts and local, even in church. Like there's bad people who do good things for other people. So for the rest of their lives, they're going to be like, oh, he helped me out, so he's a good guy. You know what I mean? Instead of saying, he might have helped me out or she might have helped me out, but that's a bad person. I mean, I'm sorry that I fell victim to this, but...
Or wrong way.
Yeah, so, because the issue is, like, bad people know who to help in order to get those kinds of, like, political points. Yeah, so, as priests, then, even if you were helped by a bad person, you don't want that to be hung over your head and be like, oh, so I can't say anything bad. You have to be able to say, you know what, that person helped me, and I'm thankful for the help, but I was tricked because if I knew how bad this person was, I wouldn't have wanted their help. But people are not able to say that for some reason, even though they're Christians. They just go, oh, but they helped me, so they're such good people. No. Like, there's people who manipulate others by helping certain people and not helping others. And it's usually people of influence or like,
Yeah, it's the helping is just a means to an end.
Yeah, and yeah, they're not and they're not right. It's Machiavellian, exactly. And in that case, as a priest who received that help, you should be able to say, I'm sorry, I felt, because you could say I'm a victim to this too, but I can't follow along with it just because he helped me, because this is evil, right? So here's a classic example that every Korean knows about. Like the elders, they take staff members or church members to like lunch or dinner, and they pay for it, and they do that several times. So in the minds of these people, they're like, oh, the elder, he fed me, so, right? And then the elder says, okay, well, I have to, I need to do this XYZ thing here. So since I fed you, right? Like we're on buddy terms, right? So help me out here. Back me up here.
야, 근데 순수한 마음은 사실은 괜찮잖아.
순수한 마음 is okay.
It's okay. But,
But,
if there's
yeah.
some kind of mind.
Yeah, but then even if they do, you can see the bad thing they're doing, though. You can see they're playing political games here. In that case, you have to say, I'll give you all your money back if that's what it takes, but I can't go along with that. That's how you act as a priest. You say, I'm here to execute God's will. I'm not here to play politics with you.
But if 나한테 잘해주는 거를 좋다고 생각하는 사람이 그러니까 베네핏이 나한테 되면 it's wrong or
Right, but that's not a priest,
안
right.
하는
Right,
것 같아요.
Right, and that's what I'm saying,
생각해서
right. So that,
되게 어려워하는 것 같아.
but that's
So there's no standard.
no, but that's how you not act as a priest.
Right.
That's how you act as a not priest of
I
God.
think because they have no standard to what is right or wrong.
They have a standard if they're
Yeah.
Christian, but they don't think in terms of what is a priest supposed to do. We're a representation of God's image.
We are all the priests.
Yeah. So everybody who is a Christian, who believes in Jesus Christ, that Jesus Christ died for their sins, that he shed his blood to wash away our sins, resurrected so we can resurrect. Everybody who believes that is a quote unquote son of God. Not my words. John chapter 1 says that. Jesus Christ gave the power to be sons of God. That's the point. Right? So in every case of the Bible, I know people are gonna when they go, oh, but Job's they're talking about angels. No, Job isn't talking about angels, it's still talking about priests. Or Solomon says, oh, the sons of God sang whatever. The sons of God always means priest. So we're supposed to act. So you have to ask, by sons of God, what does that mean? Well, God has a certain character. Son is somebody who carries out that character and sort of like manifests it into the world.
We are called by priest, right?
Everybody who's a Christian is called a priest, even women.
So that means even wherever,
Yeah.
we're in the
Yeah, so we're not-
family,
Yeah, so we're not only priests here in our family, we're priests in our workplace, we're priests, in our communities, whatever. So if we go to school, if we're part of like that board member I was talking about earlier, like we're priests there as well. So we're there to bring God's will into the situation. So yeah, if somebody goes, well, it benefits me, so I don't care. You're not acting as God's priest there.
Mhm.
You're acting as a priest of some other deity that apparently thinks it's okay to benefit while unrighteousness is going on. And this is the issue. This is what causes every nation to fail, is when Christians who should be acting like priests stop doing that because they get personal benefits or because they make money. Like I said, like a board meeting, you're like, I want to say no, and somebody goes, well, how about $1 million? Can I persuade you to say yes? Right? Some people, they say, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yay.
Right?
yeah. They close eye what they're,
Right.
they're thinking.
Yeah, and they close
어떻게 할 거냐고.
right, and they close their eyes towards like the evil that's going on. But like I said, again, like
right?
that's just one of the things that I would love to do a sermon, but it's like there's not enough time because we're already in like our third week and we're still stuck in Genesis 11 for like the third time. You know what I mean? So it's just taking too long to. So that's why we're skipping it, and then later on, I try to bring a little bit out when it has to come out. So, for instance, Abraham is a priest of God that's going to sacrifice, Isaac because that's God, and so we can bring it out there for a moment, and then then we can keep moving on. But if I bring it out now, yeah, we're going to be stuck in Genesis 11 for how long?
You know where the expression "turn a blind eye" comes from?
No, I don't.
Back when the English Navy was fighting the Spanish Navy, there was an English admiral called Horatio Nelson, and he was blind in one eye.
Oh.
And so after this great battle on the sea, the Spanish Navy surrendered, but there was huge hostilities between the two.
Right.
So
they want to kill him,
the-
probably. Right.
Yeah, even though the Spanish Armada surrendered,
Right.
the English Navy still fired on them.
Right.
And then Horatio apparently just
Yeah.
turned a blind eye to it.
Right,
And just
right.
let the war crime happen.
Right.
Oh, so he just pretended he didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah, interesting.
so that's interesting.
Hmm.
Sounds like English to me. If you look at their history, do you know during World War II, when the Germans surrendered, they did the same thing. I don't know if you guys know that.
Yeah, there's like
Americans
war
too.
crimes
American
happening
English, the
everywhere.
Allies.
Every country that
Yeah.
was in power
Right.
had done horrendous things.
Right.
That includes England, France,
The Korean military in Vietnam was
Right.
horrendous.
Greek, Rome.
Tons of war crimes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
ROK in
Right.
Vietnam during the war.
Yes, I heard. Yeah, I heard like. Yeah.
Because the Korean soldiers are so notorious that the Vietnamese North Vietnamese forces were told not to to stay away.
Right. Right.
Stay away from.
Because if they got caught, then
Right.
even if they surrendered,
Inhumane stuff.
Yes.
war crimes.
Okay, so that was Rebecca. Oh, that was Isaac. So now we're at Jacob.
Jacob, both twins, Jacob and Esau, were very different. While Jacob helped their mother, Rebekah, with her work and was her favorite, Esau hunted animals with a bow and arrow and was Isaac's favorite. Esau was the firstborn, which meant he would become head of the family when Isaac died. As part of his birthright, Esau would receive God's promise to Abraham that his descendants would be given the promised land. But Esau did not value his birthright. One day, when he was hungry, he sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of lentil stew. Selling the birthright, Esau came home one day after hunting. Hungry for food, he asked for the lentil stew Jacob was stirring, and Jacob demanded Esau's birthright in return. Esau foolishly agreed. Isaac asks Esau to prepare a special meal for him. Rebekah overhears the conversation and decides to help Jacob
Yeah.
receive Isaac's blessing.
And there's that trickery in like Laban, Sarah / their household is like. And again, this is because Rebecca was, in her mind, she was doing good because she was like, I'm helping the will of God along.
Right.
But she's not, nowhere in the Bible does God always say, like, I'm going to use human methods or human timing to do my will. God always, even in Ecclesiastes, God has his own timing, and then it's up to us to wait for that timing. Which Rebecca did not do.
How we can know the God's timing and the real?
It's whatever. If something causes us to lie, cheat, steal, or work around, these things to gain something, then it's not God's timing, because it's God's timing, is just, holy, righteous. There's no deception there. So that's how you know it's God's timing. If it requires you to do stuff that's like a sin or something like that, or even not a sin, but it's bad, then it's not God's
We
timing.
need to discern. Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes, or we deceive by myself, right?
Yeah, so it's not that we don't know, it's we want it to be God's timing, because then we go, oh, we can do it.
We want to use it as an excuse.
Yeah, as an excuse to,
Yeah.
and that's why people fall a lot.
Close the
Yeah.
eye or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's because in their mind, it's like they want this to happen,
Mhm.
but it's not God's timing or God's way. But they try to, so it's like, which is what sin does. Sin causes us to lie to ourselves and say, oh, this is what God wants, because I want it to be what God wants, right? But that's obviously, even the phrasing that we can already tell it's not what God wants. Joe, could you read the next page, Desert Life?
Isaac's family lived in tents in Beersheba,
Mhm.
which is in the desert country to the south of Canaan. In parts of the Middle East, people still live in tents, traveling from one grazing place or water hole to another with their sheep and goats. Jacob is blessed. When Isaac grew old, he asked Esau to make him his favorite meal so he could give Esau his blessing.
Which was veal, deer meat soup.
Rebekah, however, favored Jacob. While Esau was hunting, Rebekah told Jacob to disguise himself as his brother, wearing Esau's clothes and hairy goat skin on his hands. Jacob fooled Isaac, who was now blind, into thinking he was Esau, and Isaac blessed Jacob instead.
Mm-hmm.
Esau goes to hunt for food for Isaac. Jacob, disguised as Esau, is blessed. Isaac feels Jacob's hands covered with goatskin and mistakes him for Esau. Chapter 27, verse 23. His hands were hairy like those of his brothers. Rebekah disguises Jacob as Esau by covering his hands with goatskin. When Isaac touches Jacob's hands, he thinks it's Esau who is hairy.
Yeah, so you got to think about this. So how did Rebekah know to prepare like goat skin and all this stuff for Jacob to wear? This has been a long time planning. It was a conspiracy, right? Because it's not like she's like, oh, Esau's gone, I guess we're gonna have to make goat skin hair for. It's not like that, right? You see what I mean? Because it's like, how did he put it on? How did it happen so fast? How did he just put it on and be like, right? And then the question is, because he took in the deer meat as well. Where did that even come from? So that means she killed it and stored it away somewhere, where Isaac either wouldn't know it or, you see what I mean? So there's been long time planned. That's the point. The next part as well.
Chapter 27, verse 29.
And here's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Be Lord over your brothers. With his blessing, Isaac gives Jacob and his children power over Esau and his children. Once given, a blessing cannot be taken back.
Right. And so yeah, the idea is in Noah's, because remember, these guys are descendants of Noah and they're descendants of Shem. So in their mind, serving is a curse. See what I mean? But when Isaac blessed Jacob in that way, and then later when he blesses Esau, when he's like crying, he's like, "Don't you even have one blessing for me?" He says, "Yeah," and he blesses Esau with all the blessings of Jacob again. So you're like, Isaac can't do that because Jacob has all. So what's he doing here? Like I said, the content, if you read it, is if you serve Jacob, you can have all that, but you have to serve Jacob. But by serving Jacob, you become a shadow figure of Jesus Christ. And that's the point that, I mean, because this is for children, so they're missing this too. But that's the point is being a shadow figure for Jesus Christ is a good thing, because then you also receive the shadow figure blessings that come with that, whatever that thing you represent Jesus Christ with as well, whatever that may be. And here's where I disagree with this point. The circle.
By selling his birthright, Esau showed he did not deserve it. Yeah.
Yeah, so in a sense, maybe you can say that, but also in another sense, it's not that he didn't deserve it, right? Because then you're saying, so what they're trying to point out here is, if you don't know the importance of something, right, to a certain degree, you don't deserve it because you don't know the importance of it. And the New Testament agrees with that. But the way they sort of like phrase this, is trying to make it sound like Jacob, it was okay for Jacob to take it. They're trying to like make it into that. And I'm saying that's not okay. Because again, as we were just saying, the will of God is never through lying, cheating, stealing. That's never the will of God. So the will of God was that Jacob receives it one way or another, but it was not through stealing it. Does that make sense? And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but so I think it was only after Jacob. So yes, he received the blessing of his father, and yes, because God takes the blessing and the curse of the father seriously, God did give Jacob, you could say like the blessing that Isaac had, but I think it was on hold. It was on hold. In other words, God, it was like a debit card that's blocked until they got that cleared up. And the way that got cleared up is when Jacob actually became a worshiper of God. Then these blessings were poured on him. But not because he stole it, because it was God's will that he was going to receive it anyway, and it's through the faith that he receives it, if that makes sense. So yes, he receives it because Isaac's blessing on him is taken seriously by God. But so here's a question. What if Jacob never became a worshiper of God? In my mind, Jacob can't get those blessings because those blessings are a shadow figure of the blessing that Jesus Christ is going to receive. So you have to, in order to receive them, in order for them to take effect, you have to have faith. You can't just, it's not like it just works just because you stole it, if that makes sense. It's like the car. You can't drive the car without an engine, right? And the engine is faith. So once you have faith, the engine is put in the car, and then you can drive it. But until you have faith, yeah, you have the car, but it doesn't go anywhere. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, it's 9 o'clock. Any questions or comments? Actually, let's finish this. We only have like 2 more pages. Jack, could you read the next?
Yep. Jacob's flight. Jacob's flight, Genesis chapters 28 through 29. When Esau found out that Jacob had received Isaac's blessing, he was so angry that he planned to kill his brother.
Yeah, that's the way of Cain. That's why he didn't receive the blessing that Isaac gave him. It's because he went in the way of Cain, which is the same thing that Noah did. Instead of being a priest and then offering a burnt offering or something like that, he took away, or he cursed Ham. He cursed Canaan in order to get revenge on Ham. And that's the way of Cain, where you try to take revenge or you try to kill somebody for the wrong that you did. Oh, sorry, do you have to go?
No.
While learning of this, Rebekah told Jacob to run away to her brother Laban, who lived in Haran in Mesopotamia. Jacob set off on his journey, but stopped to sleep for the night when the sun had set. He placed a smooth stone on his head as a pillow and soon fell asleep. As he slept, Jacob dreamed of a great stairway rising into the sky with angels walking up and down it. At the very top of those stairs, he saw God.
They say stairs here, but in older translation it says a ladder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's called Jacob's ladder. Yeah.
Jacob later returned and built an altar in Bethel.
Oh wait, so now, so this is a regular altar. So that's to be not the same as a burnt offering altar, that because an altar is just there for memorial. Like this is what it's just sort of like representing. I was here and then I saw heaven. You know what I mean? It doesn't actually, unless you burn stuff on it, it's not a burnt offering altar.
God's promise. In his dream, Jacob saw God at the top of the stairway. God promised Jacob that he would one day give him the land on which he was lying. God said, I will bring you back to this land.
Bring you back to this land because the land is important. So the question is, why is Isaac sending him out? And then this is so like I said, we can't get into it here. We can't get into it in the Sunday, but you know the prodigal son? Do you know what the point of that story is?
상자?
Yeah. Do you know what the point of that story is? A lot of times we heard it's like the father's just waiting for the son. It's the love of God.
There's
That
like multiple versions.
Yeah.
There's the Jesus Christ.
Right.
Um,
But the center focus of it, the reason why Jesus is telling it is sonship is determined by God. So if the father says you're my son, then you're my son. How do we know that? The son spent all of his things. So then he didn't have things anymore. So does that mean he's not the son of his father anymore? And the answer to that question is no, because the father still took him in as son. Moreover, he not only took him, he gave him stuff, ring and a robe, right? So it's not the stuff that it's not the stuff you have that determine whether or not you're son. It's, and also in his speech, he says, I'll go to my father and I'll say, I have sinned against you. I've sinned against heaven. I'll come back to you as a servant. But when he rehearses that in front of his father doesn't let him finish. He doesn't let him say, I'll return to you as a servant. He doesn't let him finish that. He just says, I've sinned against you and I've sinned against heaven. He goes, that's enough, right? And he takes him back in. So the point of it is, it's the father that determines. So if the father's just like, you're my son, then you're a son. And there's nothing. So, and it's not the stuff that you have either, because that's what the second elder son is about. Because the second elder son is like, oh, you treat him this way. And then he goes, son, everything I have is yours. Right? So his point is like, your son because I say you're my son. Same thing with Jacob that's going on right now. Like, in other words, Jacob loses basically everything as he's traveling to Laban and all that stuff. And even afterwards, when Joseph goes into Egypt because of the famine, he loses everything. He has like no wealth left over. How do we know? Because he had to go down to Egypt to get stuff to eat. So he has like nothing. That's what they mean. But that doesn't mean either God has left him or God has forsaken him. It just means he just doesn't have that stuff. Does that make sense? But he's still a chosen man of God. He's a son of God. And the reason is because God claimed him through Abraham. Does that make sense? So that's why even though he's out of Canaan, he's not in Canaan. But that doesn't mean, God's not his God anymore. It still means Jacob is God's son because Jacob is God's people, or his what do you call it? Yeah, a image bearer of God, because God said you're an image bearer. You're a descendant of Abraham, whom I loved. Does it make any sense? So it's not the stuff that he has. It's the sonship of God that allows him to have.
Not of doing, just being.
Yeah, so it's God who says you're my son, and that becomes the reason why you have stuff, not the other way around. It's not because you have
something.
Stuff that you become a son of God. That's not how it works. God declares you his son, and then he gives you stuff to have. And again, the prodigal son, he lost everything. He comes back. The father goes, you're still my son. Here's a ring. Here's a robe. Right? Yeah.
And I remember when you talked about it, you talked about how asking for your birthright from your father while he's still alive is
Yeah, it's not right because you're asking him to die, right?
He wants his inheritance.
Yeah. But but despite all that, if the father says you're still my son, you're still my son, even if you lost everything. And that's the point. Okay.
Jacob's stairway. Angels walk up and down the stairway.
Mhm.
In his dream, Jacob sees Botanian ziggurat, a giant stepped pyramid which has a flight of stairs leading to a shrine at the top. Shown here is a ziggurat at Ukraine and Iraq.
Yeah, so this is not canon. I don't want you guys to think this is how, because in my mind it was a ladder, because that's how the older translations always mentioned it. This is just one of the things that can say like this might have influenced. I don't think so.
The house of God. On walking from his dream, Jacob took the stone he had slept on and set it up as a pillar. He poured oil on it, and he vowed that if God allowed him to return, he would build an altar there. He called the place Bethel.
And what they're leaving out here is he also promised to tithe everything he has. And that's tithe.
What is
Yeah.
that?
Shibucho.
시비주했다고.
Oh. He promised. He didn't do it yet because there's nothing but
If God brings him back,
yeah,
or-
he'll tithe everything that he has from that day forward. He will. So he promises God tithes.
on the day that he receives.
On the day he comes
his
back.
tithe.
But he comes back to this altar, he promises God, if you let me survive and help me to come back to this land of Canaan, I'll promise to tithe for the rest of my life, everything I have. And just by that promise alone, God protects. Not promise alone, but so if let's say you're thinking of it in a mechanistic way, like what's the exact thing that God was looking for in Jacob that made God go, okay, I'll protect you and make sure you come back here. It's for that tithe. It's for that tithe. That's how important tithe is.
I see.
Because tithe is show the faith.
Yeah, tithe. So once we have the saving faith, right? The next thing that we do right away is baptism, because we want to confess to God we actually believe in that gospel. So what's the first physical thing we can do to show God there's something in us that I believe that's not seeable? It's baptism. The first thing we can visibly show God that we have faith in Jesus Christ. The next visible thing you can do is tithing. And then the next visible thing you can do is the next visible thing you can do is Sabbath keeping, and then the next visible thing after that is tithing.
Wait, what's the order?
In that order.
What's the order?
Baptism,
Okay.
Sabbath keeping, and then tithing.
Okay.
Everything else is sort of like, you can if you want to, but it only shows.
choose. I can
Yeah.
choose.
Yeah, you can choose to do it because it's out of Thanksgiving, but these things, and the reason is because baptism, a confession of faith, a physical thing we show to God. We do. There's this thing inside of us that you can't see, but I want to show you that it's there. And the other two things is these two things belong to God. Yeah, belong to God. That's why, since you confess your faith, you're saying, okay, now understand we belong to you. How do we show that? Keep the Sabbath, which belongs to God. The day belongs to God.
Discern from the word.
Yeah.
That means.
So because we're showing God, we understand that we belong to God. So how do you show that? What's the first thing you can do if you suddenly have this realization, I belong to God?
By faith.
Yeah, but how do you show that?
We need
do
to show
you just give an offering, or do you help grandma cross the road? What's the first thing? What's the thing you can do for the rest of your life to show God we belong to you? And here's proof that I understand that.
We can say it belongs to you.
Right, you can say all you want, but there has to some because it's
We need
faith is not
action.
separate from action. Yeah, faith is what saves, but it's distinct from action, but it's not separate. So the question is, what's this thing that we do that follows faith? That's a visible proof that we understand, which is we belong to God now. Actually, not now, always belong to, but we have faith now, and we understand that. How do we show that to God? By demonstrating we understand this belongs to God and this belongs to God.
So in this time, was tithing just livestock or garments?
At this time, it would have been livestock and agriculture,
So
because the garments are made from cotton and whatever. So it would have been livestock plus agriculture stuff.
no currency.
I mean, if there was currency here, it would have been currency too. It's whatever you're trading in that represents value, whatever it is.
How would currency be?
So, for instance, so let's say Jacob,
Silver.
I mean, yeah, silver or gold or bronze, they had their own coins during this time. So anything that represents something of value, and you have it.
The coins would be burned.
No, you'd be giving it to the priest of God at that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There is this thing called the priest of God there still. How do we know? Because Abraham met that guy, and he gave him tithes of all that he had. Yeah. Is it making sense? Okay.
And then the priest would take the tithes and
Probably like use it to eat and stuff. But normally, yeah, it's just tithe is we can think of it like a tributary. It's something you give to I mean, we're giving it to God, but we're giving it to God through a priest. And the priest sort of like uses it.
That's how the Levites live.
Yeah, so the Levites lived through the tithes that the people give. And then they gave a tithe to God as well. So that the place always had something for like the strangers and like the poor people to eat and survive on. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a form of tributary. And then God says, a tributary meaning like if you have two countries that are like, one is protecting the other country,
Yeah.
then this country's like, to show our good faith to you, here's part of our, earnings. Pharaoh wanted like 20%, I think, or no, 80%. It was a huge. He wanted like a lot of it. I forget. I just remember Pharaoh wanted a lot of it. It comes out in Exodus, but yeah. So, and then what God does is he uses the stuff that he gives, and then he feeds his flock with it. He makes sure the people understand that God's the living God, and then he tries to show his people you got to serve one another. But they don't get that because Jacob didn't learn that. I mean, he learned it at the end, but it wasn't enough. He wasn't able to because by then he already had kids, so he wasn't enough to pass on to his children to serve one another. How do we know? They take Joseph and they throw him down a well. Yeah, that's how we know. How they didn't learn. Yeah, you need to serve one another. Yeah. Is this all making sense?
Wait, Jacob? They throw Jacob.
Joseph, I mean, not Jacob. Joseph. Yeah. Because in my mind, it all makes sense because it's all kind of connected into this one long thing. But it's like,
supposed to love each other, right?
Yeah.
They're like hating on each other.
yeah, and so in other words, if Esau learned to serve, then Jacob could have learned that too because they would have been together.
But Esau did forgive Jacob at the end.
Yeah, he forgave, but so the part of Isaac's curse was there's going to be a time where you have a choice to depart from.
But Esau did not serve under.
Yeah,
Right.
he said there's a time when you're going to learn. You're going to have a choice.
He goes on his own.
Yeah, he says with a sword. He says you're going to be able to live with your sword. So you have a choice. You can either serve Jacob and then receive that, or there's going to be a time where you can throw that yoke off of yourself. But when you do that, you're no longer going to be part of that inheritance. And Esau's like, because he already went the way of Canaan, he's like, all right, and he lives by his sword, and therefore forfeits his inheritance permanently.
Are there any churches that do burnt offerings?
No, there shouldn't be in church because the burnt offering is fulfilled in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So if you do burnt offering now, you're claiming Jesus Christ is not the Messiah, who is because the burnt offering is a shadow.
He's the sheep, right?
Yeah.
The Old Testament.
Yeah, the Old Testament is a shadow of the actual thing. It's a like an echo, for the thing that's actually coming. It's in the technical word for it is a type, and then Jesus Christ is the antitype because he destroys the type because the actual thing is there. So there's the image thing to remind people the Genesis 3:15 promise of God that he's going to send his man of God, seed of the woman. He's going to send him, and then he's going to be the one that's going to destroy the work of Satan and destroy the power of sin. And that's done through the very thing that what the punishment is, which is death. So, like I said, God has this funny sense of irony where he uses death to overcome death. So he does that. And if you practice burnt offering now, you're physically confessing to God, we don't think Jesus Christ is that antitype, the actual thing that the burnt offerings were representing in the Old Testament.
Yeah, you're basically believing only in Old Testament.
Not only in the Old, you're rejecting Jesus Christ as the Messiah of God.
Can't it be supplementary?
No, because the point of it, so Jesus Christ came for a once-for-all fulfillment of every Old Testament shadow, figure, and promise. A fulfillment of that, meaning the fulfillment part is important because so what they have at the burnt offering, their sins can't be forgiven by the burnt offering because animal sacrifice can't forgive sins. So this is in Hebrew. So when you realize that, you're like, well, what's the point of the burnt offering then? It's by faith they're offering it to God. So God temporarily closes his eyes, temporarily overlooks that because their faith is in the Messiah that's really going to come at that, appointed time whenever God's going to send him. So when Jesus Christ comes, right, now we understand this doesn't actually forgive sins, but that actually forgives sins. So the thing that actually forgives sins is here. Then why are you still burning stuff that doesn't forgive sins? Right?
Does Shinto have an altar?
So for us, everything revolves around Jesus Christ. So any Christianity related, whatever it is, the altar, the sacrifice, the priest that does the burnt offering, all of those are one in Jesus Christ. So in other words, Jesus Christ himself is the altar. Jesus Christ himself is the sacrifice. Jesus Christ himself is the priest that offered these burnt offerings.
So building an altar now wouldn't please God?
It would displease God because we're rejecting Jesus Christ as the altar on which God, you know what I mean? So it's like God says, we might say, God knows everything. Why do we have to pray? God says, because this is the ordained method that I chose for you to depend on me. And then we go, but you know everything, so I'm not going to pray. Well, that's not going to please God if we decide in our own minds, if we decide like what God is or is not going to receive from us, right? So God says, okay, before Jesus Christ, I'm going to look at your faith, and from that faith, I'll overlook your sin because I see where that faith is pointing to. It's directed at this Messiah whose blood will wash away your sin, right? So temporarily, God overlooks their sin, and then when Jesus Christ is here, we go, oh, you say, God, you say it's all fulfilled in Jesus Christ, but we still want to do the Old Testament stuff. Well, you're now declaring to God, like, this is the way I want to worship you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, there's only one definition that fits under that category, which is idol worshiping. Because, and this is just very simple. God says to worship me this way. So if you worship God that way, who are you worshiping? You're worshiping God, right? God says, worship me this way. You go, no, I think I'll worship you this way. Are you still worshiping God? No, because this is not the way you're worshiping God. You're worshiping this way. So you're worshiping something else. Because God can only be worshipped this way. How do we know? God says, this way is how you will worship me. And that's like the history of the Old Testament. God says, you shall worship me this way. And they're like, no, I don't think so. How about we do it this way or that way, right? And God's like, no, it's this way. It's a long-winded answer to say God will be displeased if we go back to the Old Testament stuff, which is only a shadow of things. Oh yeah, let's finish this. The house of God, yeah.
It's better is the house of God.
Yeah. And then Jacob
threw the stone as an offering to God. Jacob and Rachel. When Jacob reached Haran, he met Laban's daughter Rachel, who had.
We'll get that next week. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. When Jacob reached Haran, he met Laban's daughter Rachel, who had brought sheep to the well to be watered. Jacob fell in love with her at first sight, and then he kissed her. Jacob said, not kissed her in a sexual way. It was because it's his cousin, so it was a greeting. Yeah, it was greeting. But they're making it seem like, but it wasn't. Okay, yeah. Any questions or comments? Thank you for coming.
We have to pray for James.
Anyone log in?